Margaret, a retired librarian, faces a crisis when her daughter-in-law, Victoria, questions her ability to hold her granddaughter, Emma, due to a mild hand tremor. Feeling dismissed and sidelined, Margaret considers altering Emma's trust fund, her last bastion of control. As tensions simmer, she seeks advice from friends and professionals, taking on new roles at a bookshop and community center to prove her worth. Unexpectedly, Victoria entrusts Emma to her care, hinting at a shift in their dynamic. Will Margaret's quiet resilience mend family ties, or will hidden tensions resurface? The resolution hangs in the balance, promising deeper revelations. Loved Margaret's journey of resilience and family? Subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that spark connection. Share where you're tuning in from, and don't miss tomorrow's special tale. Your support keeps these narratives alive. Click that button and join our storytelling community today. The air in Lakeside carried the sweet fragrance of cherry blossoms, their delicate petals drifting lazily in the spring breeze. I stood in my kitchen, the familiar hum of routine grounding me as I packed a wicker basket with lemon scones, their golden crust still warm from the oven, and a jar of strawberry preserves I'd spent hours perfecting the previous summer. My weekly visits to Daniel and Victoria's house in the Pines neighborhood were a ritual I both treasured and braced myself for. The thought of seeing my 6-month-old granddaughter Emma filled my heart with a warmth that nothing else could match. But the anticipation was always tinged with unease, knowing I'd face Victoria's sharp-edged comments and Daniel's quiet complicity. At 65, I was no stranger to navigating tension, but each visit seemed to chip away at something deep inside me, a foundation I'd thought unshakable. I'd spent 30 years as Lakeside's head librarian, my hands steady as I cataloged thousands of books, mended worn spines, and guided children's small fingers across the pages of their first stories. Those hands, now occasionally betraying me with a faint tremor, were still capable, still mine. My doctor had dismissed the trembling as a minor quirk of aging, perhaps exacerbated by the blood pressure medication I had started last winter. It was nothing, I told myself, just a small inconvenience. But to Victoria, it was a flaw, a reason to question my competence, my worth. As I drove to their house, the lake shimmering in the distance like a sheet of polished glass, I tried to focus on Emma, her gummy smiles, her curious eyes. But the weight of Victoria's judgment loomed large. Their home was a study in perfection, all sleek lines and cold elegance. The furniture looked more like art than something you'd curl up on, and the abstract paintings on the walls screamed wealth in a way that made my modest craftsman bungalow feel like a relic. The white carpet, pristine and unforgiving, made me hyper-aware of every step I took. "I've brought breakfast," I called out, letting myself in with the key Daniel had given me when Emma was born. The house was quiet, save for the faint whir of Victoria's treadmill from the home gym. Daniel's voice came from the kitchen. "In here, Mom." He was at the island, eyes glued to his phone, Emma nestled awkwardly in the crook of one arm. He barely glanced up as I set the basket down and washed my hands at the sink, adhering to Victoria's rigid rules about holding the baby. Clean hands were just the start of her protocols, a checklist I'd memorized but never quite mastered in her eyes. "She's been fussy this morning," Daniel said, bouncing Emma gently as she began to squirm. "Victoria was up half the night with her." "I remember those nights," I said, drying my hands with care. "You were the same, waking every 2 hours like it was your job. Your father could sleep through anything, so it was always me pacing the house with you." I smiled at the memory, but Daniel only nodded, his attention still on his screen. My ex-husband, Gregory, had been a surgeon. His career an altar he worshipped at the expense of our family. When he left me for a nurse after 20 years of marriage, I'd been hurt but not surprised. At least he'd waited until Daniel was in college, sparing our son the worst of it. "Can I hold her?" I asked, my arms already reaching out, eager to feel Emma's warmth against me. Daniel hesitated, his eyes flicking toward the hallway. "Maybe wait until Victoria comes in. She's particular about the handoff." The words stung, a quiet reminder that I wasn't trusted, not fully. I lowered my arms, forcing a smile to mask the ache in my chest. I'd raised Daniel, spent decades nurturing children at the library, yet here I was, deemed unfit to hold my own granddaughter without supervision. Trying to shift the conversation, I gestured to my tote bag. I brought the photo albums you asked for, from when you were a baby. I thought Victoria might like to see if Emma looks like you did at her age. Daniel's smile was polite but distracted. That's great, Mom. Just leave them on the counter and we'll look through them later. I knew later was a polite fiction, just like the box of family recipes I'd given them months ago, still untouched in their pantry. Victoria appeared in the doorway, her workout clothes pristine, not a drop of sweat marring her polished appearance. Her blonde hair was pulled into a flawless ponytail, and her beauty was the kind that made you feel lesser, no matter how carefully you'd dressed. Margaret, you're early, she said, glancing at her sleek, expensive watch. I wasn't early. I'd arrived at precisely 10 o'clock a.m. Damn, as I always did, but I let it slide. Good morning, Victoria. I brought scones and preserves. Her smile was practiced, almost mechanical. That's so thoughtful. But we're on a gluten-free trial this month. Daniel's been having some digestive issues, and his wellness coach thinks it might be wheat-related. Daniel hadn't mentioned any health concerns during our last call, but he nodded along, ever the compliant partner. Thanks anyway, Mom. Emma's fussing grew louder, and Daniel handed her to Victoria with visible relief. I think she's hungry. Victoria adjusted Emma with expert precision, the baby quieting instantly in her arms. I just prepared a bottle in the warmer. Perfect timing. Sweet girl. I can feed her if you want to finish your workout, I offered, keeping my tone light despite the tightening in my chest. Victoria's smile tightened too. Oh, that's okay. We have a very specific feeding position to help with her digestion. The lactation consultant was very clear about it. I nodded, though the explanation felt like another wall between me and Emma. When I'd raised Daniel, feeding was about comfort and connection, not clinical precision. I watched Victoria settle onto a bar stool, positioning Emma with a practiced ease that made me feel both admiring and inadequate. Daniel was back on his phone, his fingers flying across the screen as he answered work emails. How's the community center? He asked, his voice casual, his eyes still on his phone. After retiring, I'd started volunteering 3 days a week at the Lakeside Community Center, helping with their literacy program and book exchange. It was work that gave me purpose, a way to stay connected to the community that I'd served for so long. It's going well, I said. We just got a grant to expand the children's section. I'm helping set up a new storytelling corner. That's nice, Daniel said, his tone absent. Victoria chimed in, her eyes still on Emma. You should be careful not to overcommit, Margaret. At your age, it's important to pace yourself. There it was again. At your age. The phrase had become Victoria's refrain, a subtle way of reminding me that I was, in her eyes, past my prime. At 65, I was healthy, active, and sharp, but to Victoria, I was fragile, teetering on the edge of obsolescence. I managed just fine, I basically said, keeping my voice even. In fact, the center director asked if I'd coordinate the summer reading program this year. Victoria didn't look up. Sounds like a lot of responsibility. You know, my mother joined a seniors walking group at Evergreen Gardens, and she loves it, much less stressful than organizing programs. Her mother, at 78, lived in an upscale retirement community, and the implication that I belonged in a similar place cut deep. I enjoy being busy, I countered. Working with the children keeps me feeling young. Emma finished her bottle, and Victoria lifted her to her shoulder, patting gently. The baby's eyes met mine across the room, and her gummy smile sent a wave of love through me, softening the edges of my frustration. I stood, drawn to her. She looked so happy and alert. May I hold her now? I asked, my voice soft, hopeful. Victoria hesitated, her gaze dropping to my hands. I realized I was fidgeting with my old wedding band, a nervous habit I'd carried since my divorce from Gregory 15 years ago. Actually, Margaret, I've been meaning to talk to you about something, Victoria said, her tone careful, the kind she used when delivering what she called constructive feedback. I've noticed your hands seem a bit unsteady lately. The tremor seems to be getting worse. Have you considered seeing a specialist? The words hit like a slap, igniting a spark of anger I hadn't felt in years. My doctor says it's normal, I said, my voice steady despite the heat rising in my chest. Victoria's expression didn't waver. General practitioners don't always catch at everything. Daniel's client Raymond, you remember him, honey? The neurologist? He said these things can sometimes indicate underlying issues. I'm perfectly healthy, I insisted, my tone sharper now. Daniel finally looked up from his phone. Mom, nobody's saying you're not. We're just suggesting a second opinion. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I stood abruptly, my hands trembling not from age but from the sting of their words. I think I should go. You just got here, Daniel protested, but there was no real conviction in his voice. I've brought the photo albums, I said, gesturing to my bag, and the scones. If you change your mind about the gluten, they're there. I'll see myself out. Mom, don't be like that, Daniel said, following me to the door. I paused, my hand on the knob, and turned to face him. Like what, Daniel? Upset that I'm apparently too decrepit to hold my own granddaughter? That you and Victoria discuss my health behind my back? That you sit silently while she treats me like I'm incompetent? Daniel's face flushed with shame, but he didn't deny it. That's not how it is. Isn't it? I asked, my voice low but firm. When was the last time you stood up for me? When was the last time you told Victoria that maybe, just maybe, I might know something about raising a child, since I raised you? From the kitchen, Victoria's voice cut through. Margaret, we're only thinking of Emma. I looked past Daniel to where she stood, arms crossed, her posture defensive. No, I said, my voice steady with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. You're thinking of yourselves and what makes you comfortable. Emma was perfectly content in my arms. You're being emotional, Victoria said, her tone dripping with dismissal. And there it was, the same look I'd seen on Gregory's face countless times. A mix of condescension and impatience, as if I were a problem to be managed. Daniel wore it too, a mirror of his father's expression. I'll see you next Thursday, I said flatly, and walked out. The drive home was a haze of hurt and fury. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my hands were shaking worse than ever, as if to mock me with Victoria's accusations. My bungalow welcomed me with its familiar embrace, the garden I'd tended for decades, the porch swing where I'd spent countless evenings, the stained glass panels in the front door that danced with color in the sunlight. This house was my sanctuary, filled with memories of Daniel's first steps by the fireplace, story time on the window seat, celebrations around the dining table. But lately it felt too large, too quiet, echoing a life where I'd been respected, valued, needed. Now I was just Margaret, the aging mother who needed to pace herself. I made a cup of tea and carried it to my study, my haven of bookshelves and memories. The desk faced a window overlooking my garden, vibrant with early spring blooms. On it sat a folder labeled Emma's Trust. I'd created it when I learned Victoria was pregnant, pouring a significant portion of my retirement savings and the proceeds from selling the vacation home Gregory and I once shared into it. The trust was meant to secure Emma's future, education, a start in life, whatever path she chose. It held nearly $500,000, growing steadily with careful investments, but I'd kept the details vague, planning to share them with Daniel and Victoria on Emma's first birthday. Now, as I opened the folder, a new thought took root. The trust was still in my name, with Emma as the beneficiary. Legally, I could change the terms or the beneficiary without consulting anyone. I wasn't spiteful by nature. Using Emma's future to settle a score felt wrong, petty, yet the trust was more than money. It was my legacy, my way of ensuring Emma knew I'd loved her, planned for her, believed in her. If Daniel and Victoria were so determined to sideline me, to reduce me to a frail old woman, perhaps they didn't need my support after all. I reached for the phone and dialed Lily Chen, my friend of 35 years. Lily, it's Maggie. Are you free for coffee tomorrow? There's something I need to discuss. Lily had been my rock through Gregory's betrayal, Daniel's teenage rebellion, my mother's illness. If anyone could help me see clearly, it was her. Of course, she said, her voice warm but tinged with concern. Is everything okay? You sound upset. I'll tell you tomorrow, I said. It's about Daniel, Victoria, and Emma. After hanging up, I sat for a long time, staring at the trust folder. The tremor in my hands had faded, replaced by a deeper shaking, a shift in the foundation of who I'd been. I'd spent my life being the reasonable one, the peacemaker, bending to others' needs. First Gregory, then Daniel, now Victoria. But in that quiet study, surrounded by books that had been my companions and a garden I'd built with my own hands, I wondered what it would feel like to stop bending. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Sorry about today. Victoria's just anxious about doing everything right with Emma. See you Thursday. No acknowledgement of his silence. No recognition of my hurt. Just another plea for me to understand, to forgive. I set the phone down without replying and opened my email. To Walter Hayes, the lawyer who'd handled my divorce and set up the trust, I wrote, Walter, I'd like to schedule an appointment to discuss making some changes to the Reynolds family trust. How is your availability next week? My finger hovered over the send button. This wasn't a decision to make in anger. I should sleep on it, talk to Lily, weigh the consequences. But then I saw Victoria's dismissive expression, heard her voice, at your age, and felt Daniel's silence like a weight on my chest. I pressed send. The next morning was bright, the kind of spring day that usually lifted my spirits. I dressed for my coffee with Lily, choosing a cornflower blue blouse she always said brought out my eyes, and my favorite silver book-shaped earrings, a small act of defiance against the morning's heaviness. As I stepped out into the sunlight, the folder on my desk seemed to linger in my mind, a question mark on a future I'd thought was settled. For the first time in years, I felt the stirrings of something new, not anger, not hurt, but a quiet resolve to reclaim my voice, my place, my worth. The coffee shop buzzed with the morning rush, a vibrant hum of voices blending with the clatter of cups and the hiss of the espresso machine. Professionals darted in and out, clutching their to-go lattes, their hurried steps echoing the rhythm of the city waking up. I settled into the familiar chaos of waterfront coffee, my hands wrapped around the smooth, worn leather of the book, a retirement gift from my library colleagues, a symbol of years spent curating knowledge and fostering community. The weight of it grounded me, a quiet reminder of who I was, even as I felt that identity slipping in the eyes of others. I glanced at Daniel, my son, his face illuminated by the soft glow of his phone. He scrolled absently, lost in a world I couldn't access, and I felt a pang of disconnection. Have you mentioned that to your doctor? Victoria's voice cut through the ambient noise, sharp and pointed, her blue eyes locking onto mine with a concern that felt more like scrutiny. The question lingered, heavy with implication, and I noticed Daniel's attention finally shift from his screen to me. My chest tightened, a mix of defensiveness and weariness rising. It's just a mild familial tremor, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Nothing to worry about. My mother had it too. But the words felt inadequate, like they couldn't bridge the gap between my truth and their doubt. Victoria's glance at Daniel was fleeting but loaded, a silent conversation I wasn't privy to. It sent a chill through me, as if I were an outsider in my own family. We're just worried about safety, Daniel said at last, his tone careful, as if he were navigating a minefield. He set his phone down, but his eyes didn't meet mine. Babies can be so unpredictable, squirming and all. His words stung, not because they were untrue, but because they carried an unspoken judgment. I straightened in my seat, my voice sharpening despite my effort to stay composed. I raised you without dropping you once, I said, the memory of those sleepless nights and tender moments flooding back. Moments when I was the expert, the one who knew best. Daniel's response was gentle but firm, a reminder of how time had shifted the ground beneath me. That was a different era, Mom. We know so much more about infant safety now. I wanted to snap back to remind him of my doctorate in library science, of the stacks of childcare books I devoured when he was born, each page a testament to my dedication. I wasn't some naive young mother fumbling through on instinct alone, but before I could, Victoria stood, cradling Emma close, her movements deliberate, protective. Maybe we can find a middle ground, she offered, her voice bright but edged with control. What if you sit on the couch with the nursing pillow? I'll place Emma there. That way you get your time with her and there's extra support. Her suggestion felt like a concession, but it was laced with distrust, as if I were a fragile relic incapable of holding my own granddaughter. I wanted to argue, to assert my capability, but the weight of their concern and the fear of making a scene in front of Emma silenced me. I nodded, swallowing my pride. On their pristine white sectional, I sank into the cushions, the fabric cool against my skin. Victoria arranged the crescent-shaped nursing pillow on my lap with the precision of a curator handling a priceless artifact. She placed Emma gently onto it, her hands lingering as if reluctant to let go. "There we go," she said, her smile bright but strained. "Much safer this way." Emma gazed up at me, her tiny face a perfect blend of Daniel's nose, Victoria's piercing blue eyes, and a stubborn little chin that mirrored my own. She was oblivious to the negotiation that had just unfolded, to the way her parents' caution chipped away at my confidence. I smiled down at her, my heart swelling with a love so fierce it almost hurt. "Hello, sweet girl," I whispered, my voice trembling with emotion. "Grandma's here." For a few precious moments, it was just us. I sang softly, an old lullaby my mother had crooned to me, its melody weaving a thread through generations. Emma's tiny hand reached up, her fingers closing around mine with surprising strength, and I felt a surge of joy so pure it drowned out the sting of Victoria's distrust. These were the moments I live for now, the ones that made the world feel whole again. But the spell broke with the sharp chime of Victoria's phone. She glanced at it, her sigh exaggerated, performative. "The grocery delivery's early," she announced, already moving toward the door. "Daniel, can you help me check the order? They swapped regular milk for organic last time." "Sure thing," Daniel said, so standing swiftly, his eagerness to escape the tension palpable. "Will just be a few minutes, Margaret," Victoria added, her tone light but laced with a warning. "You're okay with Emma there. Don't try to get up with her, though. Just call if she gets fussy." Before I could respond, they were gone, their footsteps fading toward the front door. I stared down at Emma, her tiny chest rising and falling, and a question gnawed at me. If they were so worried about my ability to care for her, why leave so quickly? Was the tremor just an excuse, a way to keep me at arm's length? My hands, steady now as they cradled her, betrayed no hint of the tremor that came and went with stress or fatigue. Right now, with their judgment hanging over me, I felt it lurking, a physical manifestation of my frustration. "They mean well," I murmured to Emma, her warmth grounding me. "Your mommy and daddy just want you safe, but Grandma knows what she's doing." The words were as much for me as for her, a quiet assertion of my worth. The sound of the front door opening broke my reverie, followed by the rustle of grocery bags and the murmur of Victoria and Daniel's voices, too low to decipher. They were lingering, perhaps savoring a moment free of my presence. Defiance stirred in me, soft but insistent. Carefully, I lifted Emma from the pillow, holding her properly against my chest, one hand supporting her head, the other her bottom, just as I'd done with Daniel all those years ago. Her warmth, her faint baby scent brought tears to my eyes. This was what I dreamed of all week, holding her, feeling her trust in me. I began to rock gently, humming the lullaby again, and Emma's eyelids fluttered, her body relaxing into sleep. The moment she drifted off, her small form melting against me, I felt a quiet triumph. But footsteps approached, and my heart quickened. I considered returning her to the pillow, but I held firm. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Victoria appeared in the doorway, her expression shifting from neutral to alarm and a heartbeat. "Margaret, what are you doing?" she hissed, rushing forward, her voice sharp enough to slice through the calm. "I specifically asked you to keep her on the pillow." "She's fine," I said softly, careful not to wake Emma. "She just fell asleep." But Victoria's face tightened, her hands already reaching. "That's not the point. We had an agreement." Daniel appeared behind her, his expression apologetic but distant, his eyes avoiding mine. "Mom, please. We talked about this." The words cut deeper than I expected. "No, you talked. I listened," I replied, keeping my voice low for Emma's sake. "And now she's sleeping peacefully. Isn't that what matters?" Victoria reached for Emma, and I reluctantly let her go, the loss of her warmth like a physical ache. Emma stirred, her face scrunching in protest, and I couldn't help myself. "She was settled," I said, the hurt seeping into my voice. "She needs her crib for proper sleep," Victoria insisted, already heading for the hallway. "Babies need consistent routines." I looked to Daniel, hoping for a flicker of support, but he only shrugged, his gesture helpless, infuriating. She's read all the books, Mom. The words felt like a betrayal. So did I shot back. 30 years ago, and again when I knew I was going to be a grandmother. He sat beside me, patting my hand in a way that felt patronizing, dismissive. Victoria just has strong feelings about how we're raising Emma. Every generation has its own parenting style. I shook my head, frustration boiling over. This isn't about parenting styles. This is about her not trusting me with my own granddaughter. Daniel sighed, his shoulders slumping. Mom, that's not fair. She's just protective. I finished his thought, my voice sharp. But at what point does protective become controlling? You used to fall asleep on my chest every night, Daniel. It was the only way you'd sleep through as a baby. His response was predictable, a refrain I'd heard too often. Things are different now. Pediatric guidelines have changed. Victoria returned, her composure restored, Emma no longer in her arms. She's down in her crib. The monitor's on, she said, settling into an armchair across from us. Margaret, I hope you understand our concerns come from love. Emma's safety is our top priority. I nodded, my throat tight. Of course it is. It's mine too. The next day I met Lily at Waterfront Coffee, our usual table by the window bathed in morning light. 2 steaming mugs waited, and Lily's warm smile greeted me. I ordered your usual, Earl Grey with a splash of milk, she said as I sat, her voice a balm to my frayed nerves. You're a lifesaver, I replied, warming my hands around the mug, its heat seeping into my palms. Lily, at 63, had the sharp insight of a seasoned teacher, her silver pixie cut framing a face that missed nothing. Her dark eyes studied me, reading the weight I carried. So, she said, leaning forward, what happened with Daniel and Victoria this time? I took a deep breath and poured out the story, my voice catching as I described Victoria's comments about my tremor, the humiliating nursing pillow arrangement, the way Daniel stood by without defending me. The coffee shop's chatter faded into the background as Lily listened, her expression shifting from sympathy to quiet indignation. And then I emailed Walter about changing the trust, I finished, staring into my now cold tea. I was so angry, Lily, I still am. She reached across the table, her hand squeezing mine with a warmth that felt like solidarity. You have every right to be upset. That was condescending, and Daniel should have stood up for you. He never does, I said quietly, the truth heavy in my chest. Not since he married her. It's like he's forgotten who raised him. Lily nodded, her lips pursed. Men often side with their wives over their mothers, but this goes beyond that. It's about respect, or the lack of it. Her words validated the ache I'd been carrying, the sense of being diminished in my own family. I keep wondering if I'm overreacting, Fond, I admitted. They're just trying to keep Emma safe. Lily's gaze was unflinching. Maggie, there's cautious, and then there's controlling. Victoria's not just protecting Emma, she's marking her territory, making sure you know your place. The bluntness of her words hit like a cold splash of water, but they rang true. So what do I do? Change the trust out of spite? That feels petty. Lily stirred into her cappuccino, her expression thoughtful. It's your money, your decision. But before you do anything permanent, ask yourself, what do you really want? I paused, sifting through the tangle of emotions. I want respect. I want to be seen as someone with valuable experience, not some frail old woman. I want a real relationship with Emma. Lily's voice softened. Then changing the trust won't fix that. It might feel good in the moment, but it won't solve the root issue. So I just let them treat me like I'm incompetent? Frustration sharpened my words. Lily's eyes sparked with an idea. No, you prove them wrong. You show your capability in ways they can't ignore. I frowned, intrigued. How? She grinned, leaning forward. Remember when the library board tried to push you into early retirement, claiming you couldn't handle the digital shift? You didn't argue. You learned every system, built the digital literacy program, and ended up training the board themselves. The memory brought a small smile to my face, a reminder of my resilience. So instead of changing the trust now, I use it as leverage later, after I've proven myself. Lily shook her head. Don't think of it as leverage. This isn't about manipulation. It's about setting boundaries and commanding respect. We talked for another hour, our conversation weaving through aging, family dynamics, and the quiet invisibility that creeps up on women as we grow older. By the time we left, a plan was taking shape, not a dramatic showdown, but a steady, deliberate path forward. That afternoon, I kept my appointment with Dr. Rivera for my regular checkup. After the usual tests, I brought up the tremor, my voice steady despite the vulnerability I felt. Victoria thinks it's gotten worse, I said. She's worried it means something serious. Dr. Rivera, a pragmatic woman in her 50s, had me extend my hands and perform a series of movements. It's slightly more noticeable than last time, she said, her tone matter of fact. But your other tests show no neurological concerns. It's likely essential tremor, common, usually benign. Is there anything I can do? I asked, hoping for something concrete to bolster my case. Medications can help if it's interfering with daily life, she said. Lifestyle changes too. Less caffeine, more sleep, stress management. Speaking of, your blood pressure's up today. I gave a humorless laugh. That might be because my daughter-in-law thinks I'm too shaky to hold my granddaughter. Rivera's expression softened, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. Family stress can amplify physical symptoms. Would you like a medical assessment stating your tremor doesn't affect your ability to safely hold an infant? The offer touched me deeply. Would you? That might help. She nodded, already jotting notes. I'll also refer you to Dr. Chen, no relation to Lily, for a neurologist's opinion. Not because I'm worried, but because it'll add weight to what I already know. You're perfectly capable. I left the clinic with her note and referral, a mix of vindication and sadness settling in my chest. Needing a doctor's note to prove I could hold my own granddaughter felt like a defeat, but it was a step toward reclaiming my place. The next morning, I drove to Hayes and Maroro, Walter's law office in a charming Victorian building downtown. The modernized interior contrasted with its historic facade, much like my own blend of experience and determination to adapt. Walter greeted me with a warm handshake, his presence as steady as it had been during my divorce 15 years ago. Maggie, good to see you, he said, gesturing to a leather chair across from his desk. Your email surprised me. I thought the trust was exactly as you wanted. It was, I said, settling in, but things have changed. Walter, 59, with silver-streaked hair and an air of quiet authority, nodded. What changes are you considering? I took a deep breath, choosing honesty. I want to understand my options. The trust is for Emma, education funds, principal at 25. I'm still the trustee with full control until my death, correct? He confirmed with a nod. You can adjust the terms or beneficiary during your lifetime. I leaned forward. That's what I want to explore, not changes now, but possibilities if tensions with Daniel and Victoria persist. They're treating me like I'm incompetent, sidelining me from Emma's life. Walter polished his glasses, a thoughtful habit I'd come to recognize. Incompetent is not a word anyone would associate with you, Maggie, but I'd caution against financial decisions driven by emotional conflict. I clarified, I'm not planning to disinherit Emma. I just want to ensure my voice, my values, remain part of her life, even if her parents push me out. For the next hour, we explored options: educational trusts with conditions, staged distributions, charitable components reflecting my values. Walter's anecdotes about other families brought clarity, and by the end, I felt empowered, armed with knowledge but not locked into any decision. I left his office with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to prove my worth, not through confrontation, but through quiet, undeniable competence. As I left Walter's office, a sense of calm settled over me, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had churned in my chest since yesterday's heated exchange with Victoria. Walter's measured tone and thoughtful advice had grounded me, offering a clarity I hadn't felt in days. I'll prepare some sample documents for you to review, he had said as we wrapped up our meeting, his voice steady and reassuring. No changes will be filed until you give explicit approval. Take your time to consider the implications of any adjustments. His words lingered, not just as professional guidance, but as a reminder that I held the reins, that I could choose my next steps carefully. I thanked him, my voice softer than I expected, heavy with gratitude for his steady presence. This has been immensely helpful, Walter. He escorted me to the door, his steps deliberate, his expression kind but serious. Then he paused, his hand resting lightly on the doorframe. Maggie, may I offer a bit of personal advice? His tone carried the weight of years spent navigating delicate family matters. I nodded, eager for his perspective. As someone who's seen countless family disputes unfold, I can tell you this. Money is a powerful tool, but it's rarely the key to mending relationships. More often, it complicates them. The issues between you, Daniel, and Victoria won't be resolved by financial maneuvering alone. His words struck a chord deep within me, resonating with a truth I'd been reluctant to face. I nodded again, my throat tightening as I absorbed the wisdom in his caution. I know, I said quietly, but having options, it gives me a sense of control when I've been feeling so powerless. Walter's lips curved into a small, understanding smile. Fair enough. Just keep in mind that the goal isn't to win a power struggle. It's about preserving your relationship with Emma and her parents, keeping it meaningful and intact. His words were a gentle nudge, a reminder of what truly mattered. I left his office with a renewed sense of purpose, stepping into the soft glow of Lakeview Park. The spring sunshine bathed the world in warmth, and the laughter of children playing nearby lifted my spirits, their carefree joy a balm to my weary heart. As I walked, I let Walter's advice settle in. He was right. Money wouldn't heal the rift between me and my son's family. But knowing I had choices, that I wasn't at the mercy of their decisions, made me feel less like a victim and more like a woman with agency, capable of shaping her own path. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. A text from Daniel. Mom, are you okay? You didn't respond to my message yesterday. I found a bench beneath a blossoming cherry tree and sat down, the weight of his words settling over me. Part of me ached to pour out my hurt, to tell him how deeply his and Victoria's actions had wounded me. But years of experience had taught me that raw honesty often led to defensiveness, not understanding. I typed and deleted several responses, each one too sharp, too vulnerable. Finally, I settled on something neutral, careful. I'm fine, just needed some time to think. See you Thursday as usual. His reply came almost instantly. Victoria says she's sorry if she upset you. She's just protective of Emma. The message stung, not a direct apology from Victoria, and no acknowledgement of Daniel's own role in the tension. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, tempted to push back. But I decided against it. Words wouldn't bridge this gap, not yet. Actions would speak louder, and I resolved to let mine do the talking in the days ahead. That afternoon, I found myself at Turning Pages, the cozy independent bookshop downtown that had been my haven for decades. The familiar scent of paper and ink enveloped me as I stepped inside, a comforting embrace that eased the knot in my chest. Martha, the owner, greeted me with her usual warmth, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Looking for something for Emma? She asked, knowing my habit of picking out books for my granddaughter. Yes, I replied, but also something else. Are you still looking for part-time help? I remember you mentioned it last month. Martha's eyebrows shot up, surprise mingling with delight. I am actually Tuesday and Thursday mornings, plus the occasional Saturday. Are you interested? I nodded, a spark of excitement igniting within me. I've been thinking about getting back into the book world, just a few hours a week. The community center work is rewarding, but I miss being surrounded by books and readers. Martha's face lit up. Maggie, you'd be perfect. Your knowledge of literature is unmatched, and so many of our customers already know you from your library days. We discussed the details, hours, responsibilities, the rhythm of the shop, and I left with a new picture book for Emma tucked under my arm and a promise to start the following Tuesday. The decision felt impulsive yet right, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. The bookshop would give me a new focus, a modest income, and most importantly, a reminder to myself and to others that I was still vibrant, capable, and valuable. The rest of the week unfolded in a whirlwind of activity. Dr. Rivera's medical assessment arrived, a detailed report confirming that my essential tremor was mild and posed no safety concerns for handling an infant. I scheduled a follow-up with a neurologist for the next month, more out of caution than necessity, the letter a quiet reassurance in my arsenal. I also called my older sister, Eleanor, in Oregon. Her bluntness was exactly what I needed. a no-nonsense perspective to cut through my tangled emotions. Victoria sounds like a control freak, she declared after I recounted the situation, her voice crackling with indignation. And Daniel needs to grow a backbone. But Maggie, you've got to be strategic. Don't let them push you into decisions you'll regret. I'm trying, I assured her, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm gathering information, getting medical documentation, even taking that part-time job at the bookshop. Eleanor's approval came through the line like a warm hug. Good. Show them you're not just sitting around waiting for your weekly visit with Emma. Build a life they have to respect. Her words bolstered my resolve. A reminder that I wasn't powerless, that I could carve out a space for myself beyond the role of grandmother. By Thursday morning, I felt ready for my regular visit to Daniel and Victoria's house. I dressed with intention, choosing a new coral blazer, a crisp white blouse, and navy trousers that fit me perfectly. Professional, stylish, confident. The outfit was armor, a declaration of my strength. I packed Dr. Rivera's letter, the picture book for Emma, and a box of specialty teas for Victoria, a peace offering, though I wasn't sure she'd see it that way. When I arrived, I was surprised to see Daniel's car still in the driveway, an unusual sight past 9 a.m. I knocked instead of using my key, a small gesture to signal respect for their space, hoping it might set a new tone. Victoria opened the door, Emma balanced on her hip, her expression faltering for a moment as she took in my appearance. Perhaps the new outfit, perhaps the knock instead of my usual entrance. Margaret, she said, her tone cautious, but not unkind. Dinah, come in. Daniel was in the living room, his laptop open on the coffee table, a faint frown creasing his brow. Morning, Mom, he said, standing to greet me. I'm working from home today. Thought it might be nice for us all to spend some time together. His words carried a hint of calculation, as if this was his attempt to smooth over last week's tension. I appreciated the effort, even if it felt orchestrated. That's lovely, I said, keeping my voice light and warm. I brought something for Emma and some tea I thought you might enjoy, Victoria. She accepted the tea with a surprised, "Thank you," her tone softer than I had expected, almost genuine. To my astonishment, Daniel took Emma from Victoria's arms and immediately offered her to me. Would you like to hold her? He asked, his casual tone belying the weight of the moment. I'd love to, I replied, setting my bag down and reaching for my granddaughter. Victoria tensed slightly, her eyes flickering, but she didn't object as Daniel placed Emma in my arms. My hands were steady as I cradled her, her familiar weight grounding me. She had grown since I'd last seen her, her eyes brighter, her movements more deliberate. I smiled down at her, my heart swelling with a love so fierce it nearly overwhelmed me. She missed her grandma, Daniel said, his words carrying a forced warmth, but I clung to the sentiment, grateful for the olive branch. We settled in the living room, me holding Emma while Victoria prepared the tea I'd brought. The conversation started awkwardly, both of us tiptoeing around last week's confrontation. Daniel spoke about a new client at his financial advising firm, his voice animated but careful. I shared updates about the community center's latest grant, keeping my tone upbeat. After about 20 minutes, Emma began to fuss, her tiny face scrunching in discomfort. Victoria reached for her instinctively, but I spoke first, my voice calm but firm. I think she might be getting hungry. Would you like me to feed her if you have a bottle ready? Victoria hesitated, her expression unreadable, then nodded stiffly. There's one in the warmer. I'll get it. While she was in the kitchen, Daniel turned to me, his voice low. Mom, about last week. It's all right, I interrupted gently, not ready to dive into that wound. I know you both want what's best for Emma. We do, he said, relief washing over his face as he avoided a deeper conversation. And Victoria really is sorry if she came across as, well, controlling. I understand, I replied, choosing my words carefully. I didn't want to push for more today. A softer approach felt wiser. By the way, I saw Dr. Rivera this week for my regular checkup. She said the tremor is just essential tremor, nothing neurological to worry about. I didn't mention the letter in my bag, not yet. I wanted to test this gentler dynamic before presenting something that might feel like a challenge. That's good to hear, Daniel said, his shoulders relaxing. Victoria returned with the bottle and, to my surprise, handed it directly to me instead of insisting on taking Emma back. "Here you go," she said, her voice neutral. "She usually takes about 4 ounces at this time of day." "Thank you," I replied, adjusting Emma in my arms and offering her the bottle. She latched on immediately, her blue eyes locking onto mine as she drank, and in that moment I felt a quiet triumph. Feeding my granddaughter, feeling her small body relax against me, was a victory. Small, but profound. "I've been meaning to tell you," I said conversationally as Emma drank. "I've taken a part-time position at Turning Pages, just a few mornings a week." Daniel's brow shot up. "The bookshop? Why would you do that? You don't need the money." "It's not about money," I explained, my voice steady. "It's about staying engaged with books and readers. Martha needs someone with knowledge of literature, and I miss that world." Victoria's interest seemed genuine. "That sounds lovely, actually. I always liked that store. They have the best selection of design books in town." The conversation shifted to books, a safe topic that allowed us to connect without touching the raw edges of our conflict. As Victoria spoke about a novel her book club had chosen, I caught glimpses of the woman Daniel had fallen for. Intelligent, passionate, not just the controlling figure I'd built up in my mind. When Emma finished her bottle, I burped her with practiced ease, then continued holding her as we talked. My hands remained steady, my confidence growing with every moment that passed without comment from Victoria. Eventually, Emma dozed off in my arms, her face peaceful in sleep. "Would you like me to put her down for her nap?" I offered, meeting Victoria's eyes. She hesitated, a flicker of internal struggle crossing her face, then nodded. "Sure, the nursery's all set up." I carried Emma upstairs to her nursery, a serene space in soft greens and yellows. I laid her gently in her crib, tucking a light blanket around her, and stood for a moment watching her sleep. The quiet connection I felt with her, the love that pulsed through me, was a reminder of why I was fighting for this. For her, for us. When I returned downstairs, Victoria and Daniel were looking at something on her phone, their expressions tense. They straightened up quickly when they saw me. "Everything okay?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Fine," Daniel said too quickly. "Emma go down easily?" "Like an angel," I confirmed, choosing to let their tension slide. "She's sleeping soundly." Victoria checked the baby monitor, her shoulders easing as she saw Emma resting peacefully. "Thank you, Margaret," she said, her voice softer than before. The rest of the visit passed smoothly. We discussed plans for Emma's upcoming baptism, and Victoria surprised me by asking if I'd like to select the readings for the service. "You know religious literature better than anyone in the family," she said, a compliment that felt like a tentative step toward reconciliation. When it was time to leave, Daniel walked me to the door while Victoria took a work call in the kitchen. "This was nice, Mom," he said. "Much better than last week." "Yes," I agreed, my heart heavy but hopeful. "It was." "So we're good?" he asked, his eyes searching mine for an easy resolution. I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised now, a man I didn't always understand. "We're working on it," I said honestly. "I want a good relationship with you, Warwick and Victoria, and most of all, I want to be a meaningful part of Emma's life." He nodded, relief softening his features. "That's what we want too." "I hope so," I said, reaching for my bag. "Oh, I almost forgot. I saw Dr. Rivera this week about the tremor. She wrote a letter confirming it's just essential tremor and doesn't affect my ability to care for Emma safely. I brought it in case you or Victoria wanted to see it." I handed him the envelope, watching as something, embarrassment, perhaps shame, flickered across his face. "Mom, you didn't need to do this," he said, not opening the letter. "I wanted to," I replied firmly, "for Emma's sake and for peace of mind all around." He slipped the letter into his pocket with a nod. "I appreciate it, and I'm sorry if we made you feel less than capable." It wasn't the full acknowledgement I'd hoped for, but it was a start. As I drove home, I reflected on the visit. The dynamics had shifted, not dramatically, but enough to notice. My calmer approach, paired with Victoria's apparent effort to be less controlling, had created a small space for respect. But I wasn't naive enough to think one pleasant visit had resolved everything. The underlying issues remained, simmering beneath the surface. When I got home, an email from Walter awaited me with the sample trust documents he'd promised. I saved them for later, not ready to dive into decisions while my emotions were still raw from the morning. The trust funds were my safety net, a source of power I could wield if needed, but not a weapon to use lightly. Instead, I turned my focus to preparing for my first day at Turning Pages. I spent the evening curating a reading list for different age groups, brushing up on current bestsellers and literary awards, and choosing an outfit that balanced practicality and authority, comfortable for shelving books, but polished enough to reflect my expertise. The weekend was a quiet reprieve. Saturday morning, I tended to my garden, finding solace in the rhythmic work of preparing the soil for summer planting. The earth beneath my fingers, the scent of fresh dirt, grounded me in a way few things could. In the afternoon, I visited the community center to finalize the children's reading corner. Marcus, the director, was beaming as we arranged the colorful bookshelves and cozy floor cushions. "This is going to make such a difference for our after-school program," he said, his enthusiasm infectious. "Having a dedicated reading area will show the kids that books are special, not just schoolwork." "That was always my philosophy at the library," I agreed. "Reading should feel like a privilege, not a chore." Marcus studied me thoughtfully. "You know, Maggie, we're expanding our summer programming this year. Would you consider taking on a more formal role? Maybe coordinating the reading program, like we discussed earlier. The grant came through so we can offer a modest stipend." The offer was tempting, a chance to further anchor my days with purpose. Between this and the bookshop, I'd have a schedule that showcased my skills, a tangible reminder of my value. "I'd be honored," I told him. "Let me check my calendar to make sure I can commit the time." Sunday morning, I attended the early service at Lakeside Community Church, a ritual that had anchored me for decades. During coffee hour, friends and acquaintances surrounded me, asking about Emma and sharing stories of their own grandchildren. These conversations, once a source of pure joy, now carried a bittersweet edge. I chose my words carefully, avoiding the tensions with Daniel and Victoria. Judith Morgan, whose late husband had served on the library board with me, pulled me aside. "Maggie, are you all right? You seem preoccupied." Her concern, born of 30 years of friendship, broke through my carefully constructed facade. "Just some family challenges," I admitted. "Daniel and Victoria are particular about how involved I should be with Emma." Judith nodded, her eyes warm with understanding. "The modern parent dilemma. My daughter Rebecca barely let me hold my grandson until he was walking. Now she begs me to babysit every weekend." "How did you handle it?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Patience and selective memory loss," she said with a wink. "I forgot their rules when they weren't looking, but never let them catch me. And I kept showing up, proving I was capable in my own way." Her advice, practical yet laced with humor, stayed with me as I drove home. A reminder that persistence and quiet strength could pave the way forward. I had been keeping myself occupied, deliberately filling my days with new responsibilities, and carving out a life that didn't revolve around waiting for a phone call from my son, Daniel, or his wife, Victoria. It wasn't about resentment, it was about independence, about proving to myself that I could thrive without being tethered to their needs. I confided this to my friend Judith over coffee one afternoon, my voice tinged with a mix of determination and vulnerability. I told her how I was taking on new roles, building something for myself, not out of desperation, but out of a quiet resolve to redefine my place in the world. Judith's eyes sparkled with understanding. She leaned forward, her voice warm and conspiratorial, assuring me it was the right move. "Nothing makes you more compelling to busy parents than being too engaged in your own life to drop everything for them," she said. "They start to miss the free babysitting, the grandmother always ready to step in. You'll see, they'll come around." We shared a laugh, the can that felt like a release, and for the first time in days, I felt a weight lift from my chest. The ache of feeling sidelined by Daniel and Victoria didn't vanish. But knowing this dynamic wasn't unique to me, that other grandparents navigated the same delicate balance, gave me a flicker of hope. It didn't erase the sting, but it softened it, offering a broader perspective that made the hurt feel less personal, less isolating. That Sunday evening, I finally mustered the energy to open an email from Walter, my financial advisor. He'd attached trust documents for my granddaughter Emma, outlining 3 potential paths forward. The first option was to maintain the existing structure, but add detailed provisions for her education, ensuring her future was secure without disrupting the framework I'd already established. The second proposed a staged distribution model, tying funds to milestones beyond just age, perhaps academic achievements or personal goals, giving Emma a sense of purpose as she grew. The third was more intricate, blending family support with charitable contributions, a way to teach Emma the value of giving back while securing her inheritance. Each option had its strengths, and none demanded an immediate choice. I saved the documents to a folder labeled Emma's Future, closed my laptop, and exhaled deeply. For the first time since my tense confrontation with Victoria, I felt a quiet sense of control, a calm that had slipped through my fingers in the days prior. The trust was a tangible reminder of my influence, a tool to shape Emma's life, even if my role as grandmother felt uncertain. Monday morning brought an unexpected warmth when my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. It was a photo of Emma, her face smeared with fruit puree, her smile wide and unself-conscious as she sat in her high chair. The caption read, "Having breakfast with Dad while Mom's at an early meeting. Thought Grandma would want to see the mess." My heart swelled at the sight of her, the joy in her eyes piercing through the lingering hurt. The casual tone of Daniel's message felt like a small but meaningful gesture, an olive branch extended not out of obligation, but as a quiet acknowledgement of my place in Emma's life. I tapped out a reply, my fingers light on the screen, a heart emoji followed by, "She gets messier every time I see her, save some bananas for Thursday." The exchange, brief as it was, felt like a step toward mending the rift, a reminder that love could bridge even the widest gaps. That afternoon, I met Lily for tea, eager to share the developments of the past few days. As we sipped chamomile in the cozy cafe, I recounted the more positive visit with Daniel and Victoria, the photo of Emma, and the trust documents I was considering. Lily listened intently, her expression soft but attentive, nodding as I described the shift in my interactions with my son and daughter-in-law. When I finished, she tilted her head, her voice gentle but probing. "So, you're not changing the trust for now?" I leaned back, considering her question. "I'm keeping my options open," I said. Walter laid out some alternatives I could pursue if needed, but there's no urgency. Right now, I'm focused on showing them who I am through what I do, not just what I say. Lily's smile was approving, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "That's a wise approach, taking the high road while holding your ground." Emboldened by her support, I shared another idea that had been simmering. "I'm thinking about taking some classes," I said, my voice brightening. "The community college offers a digital photography course I've always wanted to try, and there's a memoir writing workshop at the senior center." Lily's enthusiasm was immediate, her hands clapping together softly. "That's perfect. Build a life so rich and vibrant that they can't help but see you as the dynamic woman you are, not just Daniel's mom or Emma's grandma." Her words lingered with me as I drove home, a quiet affirmation of the path I was forging. The past 5 days had transformed my perspective. What began as raw hurt and frustration had evolved into something more deliberate, more empowered. This wasn't a reckless rebellion against my son and daughter-in-law's dismissal. It was a reclamation of my identity, a rediscovery of my agency. The trust fund remained a powerful tool, a way to assert my role in Emma's future, but it was no longer my only leverage. I had my own life to build, my own passions to pursue. That evening, I sat in my garden as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold, pink, and deepening blue. The day lily beds I'd planted years ago were sprouting their first green shoots, a promise of vibrant blooms to come. Like those perennials, I was emerging from a season of dormancy, pushing through the weight of complacency and resignation towards something new, something alive. I hadn't yet decided what changes, if any, I'd make to Emma's trust, but I had made a more profound choice. I would no longer allow myself to be diminished or pushed to the margins. Whether Daniel and Victoria saw it yet or not, I was changing. The woman who would greet them on Thursday would be different, stronger, more assured than the one who had left their house in tears the week before. My phone chimed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a calendar reminder. A neurologist appointment Dr. Rivera had arranged to address the tremor that had sparked Victoria's concerns. I confirmed the time, then added another event to my schedule. Lunch with Sophia Patel, the financial advisor Walter had recommended. Sophia was available to discuss investment strategies for the trust, regardless of which structure I ultimately chose. Knowledge, like money, was power, and I intended to equip myself with both. The next morning, Tuesday, dawned with a gentle spring rain tapping against my window, the kind that made the world smell fresh and renewed. I dressed carefully for my first day at Turning Pages, the local bookshop, choosing a comfortable yet polished outfit, dark jeans, a soft blue cardigan over a white blouse, and flats that would keep me steady through long hours on my feet. I added my book-shaped earrings, a playful nod to my love of literature, and pinned my silver hair into a neat twist. When I arrived at 9 o'clock, the shop was already humming with quiet activity. Martha, the owner, greeted me with a warm smile and spent the next hour guiding me through the inventory system, register procedures, and daily routines. Though the tools had evolved, digital tracking had replaced card catalogs, and e-readers sat alongside physical books, the heart of the work remained unchanged, connecting people with stories that could inform, entertain, or transform them. Martha led me to the children's section, explaining the rhythm of the shop's clientele. Mornings bring retirees and mothers with young kids, she said. Lunchtime draws professionals from downtown, and after school, we get teenagers hunting for the latest young adult novels. I nodded, already imagining the recommendations I could offer each group, drawing on my years as a librarian. When Martha mentioned her dream of starting a children's storytime program, her voice hesitant, I saw an opportunity. I'd be happy to lead it, I offered, picturing Saturday mornings filled with eager young faces. We could try a session next weekend and see how it goes. Martha's face lit up, her enthusiasm infectious. Perfect! I'll put up signs and post it on our social media. The morning flew by as I settled into the work. I helped an elderly man find a Churchill biography, guided a frazzled young mother to picture books for her truck-obsessed toddler, and arranged a display for the upcoming summer reading season. The familiar cadence of literary work filled me with a quiet joy, a sense of purpose I hadn't realized I'd been missing. During a lull, Martha joined me at the register, her voice warm with approval. "You're a natural, Maggie. The customers already love you." I smiled, admitting how good it felt to be back among books, to feel useful again. Then, lowering her voice, Martha shared an unexpected tidbit. "Victoria Reynolds called earlier to order a book. When I mentioned you'd started working here, she seemed surprised." I kept my expression neutral, though curiosity stirred within me. "Oh?" Martha continued, oblivious to the undercurrent. "She asked about your schedule, whether you were just filling in or if it was regular. I hope I didn't overstep by saying you'd be here Tuesdays, Thursdays, and occasional Saturdays." I reassured her it was fine, my mind racing. Victoria was my daughter-in-law, I explained, and Martha nodded, mentioning Victoria's precise orders for parenting books in the past. The conversation shifted to book shipments, but I couldn't shake my curiosity about Victoria's interest. I hadn't shared my exact schedule with her or Daniel. Why did it matter to her now? After my shift, I stopped by the community center to finalize paperwork for the summer reading program coordinator role. Marcus, the director, was thrilled, outlining his vision for an expanded program to reach underserved children. "We need to connect with kids who don't have books at home or parents with time to read to them," he said, his passion mirroring my own. I suggested arranging transportation from underserved neighborhoods, and we spent an hour brainstorming, my excitement growing with each idea. This work felt meaningful, a perfect complement to the bookshop and my volunteer commitments. As I left, my phone rang. Daniel's name flashed on the screen, an unusual midweek call. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice carrying a forced cheer that usually meant he needed a favor. "How are you?" I told him about my first day at the bookshop and my new role at the community center, sensing his surprise. "Wow, you're keeping busy," he said. "I thought retirement meant slowing down." I corrected him gently, explaining that retirement was about choosing how to spend my time, pursuing opportunities that excited me. He conceded, then got to the point. Victoria had a last-minute client meeting the next morning, and he had an unavoidable presentation. Their regular sitter was on vacation. Could I watch Emma for a few hours? The request caught me off guard. After Victoria's concerns about my tremor and their insistence on the nursing pillow, They now trusted me to babysit? I was tempted to highlight the inconsistency, but chose a more strategic response. I'd love to help, I said, keeping my voice warm. What time? Daniel's relief was palpable. Around 8, Victoria leaves by 8:30 and I need to be downtown by 9. I promised to be there and he mentioned Victoria's written instructions for Emma's routine, adding that she was getting more active. I bit back a retort about raising an active baby myself, assuring him Emma and I would have a wonderful morning. After the call, I sat in my car, processing the shift. This was a vote of confidence. Even if born of necessity, it was a chance to prove my capability in a way they couldn't dismiss. I stopped at the grocery store, buying ingredients for homemade applesauce, Emma's favorite solid food, and a small stuffed owl, reminiscent of the toys Daniel loved as a baby. At home, I prepared for the next day, cooking the applesauce with a hint of cinnamon and selecting an outfit that balanced comfort and competence. I also revisited Walter's trust documents, weighing whether this new trust in me might influence my decision. For now, I'd keep my options open. One morning wouldn't undo months of feeling sidelined. Wednesday morning, I arrived at Daniel and Victoria's house at 8 a.m., carrying the applesauce and the gift-wrapped owl. Victoria answered, dressed in a sharp business suit, her face a mix of relief and anxiety. Margaret, thank you for coming. It's such short notice, she said, ushering me inside. She pointed to a stack of notes on the kitchen counter. Emma's schedule, emergency contacts, dietary restrictions. I nodded, setting my bag down. We'll be fine, I said lightly. I raised a baby before, remember? Victoria flushed slightly, acknowledging the reminder. Of course, it's just every baby's different, and Emma has her needs. I assured her I'd follow the instructions, and Daniel appeared with Emma, her face lighting up at the sight of me. He handed her over without hesitation, and I savored her weight in my arms, her sticky fingers patting my face. Victoria hovered, detailing the playpen's setup and nap schedule, her reluctance to leave evident. I reassured her, urging her to focus on her meeting. After they left, the house grew quiet, filled only with Emma's happy babbling. I settled her in her high chair, reviewing Victoria's meticulous notes, 3 color-coded pages, as precise as a battle plan. Your mom doesn't leave much to chance, does she? I said to Emma, who squealed in response. But that's okay. We all love in our own ways. I cleaned Emma's face and hands, then brought her to the living room, where an elaborate playpen awaited, filled with educational toys designed to spark development. I placed her inside, sitting nearby as she crawled from toy to toy, her determination reminding me of Daniel's childhood focus. After 20 minutes, she grew restless, and I decided to deviate slightly from Victoria's tummy time schedule. I lifted her out and carried her to the picture window, pointing to the backyard. Look, Emma, said, her eyes wide as she followed my finger, her curiosity a mirror of my own rediscovered sense of wonder. The morning sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow on Emma as she sat in her high chair, her tiny fingers grasping at the air. I pointed toward the maple tree just beyond the glass, where a robin darted back and forth, weaving twigs and grass into a delicate nest. Look, sweetheart, I said softly, my voice brimming with wonder. That little bird is building a home for her babies, just like your mommy and daddy made one for you. Emma's wide eyes followed the bird's quick movements, her face alight with curiosity, as if she could sense the magic in the creature's tireless devotion. Inside, my heart swelled with the simple joy of sharing this moment with my granddaughter, marveling at how her innocence seemed to make the world feel new again. When the robin vanished into the branches, I scooped Emma into my arms, her soft weight of familiar comfort against my chest. We drifted toward the bookshelf, where Victoria had meticulously arranged a collection of tactile books, each one a small treasure of textures and colors. I selected one with a cover of fuzzy sheep and crinkly leaves, settling us both on the couch. Emma nestled into my lap, her tiny body warm and trusting. As I read the simple story aloud, my voice rose and fell with the rhythm of the words, guiding her chubby fingers over the book's pages. She giggled when her hand brushed the rough burlap of a scarecrow's hat, and her delighted squeal sent a wave of warmth through me. Each texture seemed to spark a new discovery in her, and I felt a quiet pride in watching her mind unfold, knowing I was part of this fleeting, precious moment. The morning flowed effortlessly, a gentle dance of reading, playing, and exploring, each activity blending into the next like notes in a familiar song. I followed Victoria's schedule as a loose guide, diaper changes, snack time, more play, but I let Emma's cues shape our rhythm rather than clinging to rigid time slots. There was a freedom in this flexibility, a trust in the natural ebb and flow of a child's needs. Emma seemed to thrive in it, her curiosity blooming like a flower in spring. She toddled after a rolling ball with fierce determination, her laughter filling the room when it bounced off the wall. Watching her, I felt a deep, almost aching joy, tempered by the fleeting thought of how quickly these moments would pass. At 10:15, I brought out the homemade applesauce I'd prepared, its faint cinnamon scent wafting through the air. I offered Emma a small spoonful, holding my breath as she eyed it warily, her little brow furrowing in suspicion. Then with a sudden burst of courage, she opened her mouth, her face lighting up as the sweet tart flavor hit her tongue. Spoonful by spoonful, she grew bolder, though more applesauce ended up smeared across her cheeks and bib than in her belly. Her delighted grin, framed by sticky streaks of fruit, made the mess feel like a triumph. I chuckled, wiping her face gently, my heart full of her unfiltered joy. As I cleaned her up, I noticed her eyelids drooping, her small hands rubbing at her eyes in that universal sign of baby exhaustion. Victoria's schedule called for a nap at 11, but Emma's body was speaking now, and I chose to listen to her instead. Cradling her in my arms, I climbed the stairs to the nursery, the soft creak of the rocking chair welcoming us as I settled in. I hummed a lullaby, the same one I'd sung to Daniel decades ago, my voice low and soothing. Emma's body grew heavy against me, her breath slowing into a gentle rhythm. Unlike Victoria's precise nap routine, complete with a white noise machine, blackout curtains, and a thermostat set to exactly 68 degrees, I relied on the timeless comfort of a grandmother's embrace. The rocking chair's steady motion felt like a bridge between past and present, connecting me to the countless moments I'd rocked my own children to sleep. When Emma's breathing deepened into the soft snores of sleep, I eased her into the crib, tucking the light blanket around her as Victoria had instructed. Standing there, watching her chest rise and fall, I was overcome by a quiet awe. This tiny person, with my son's eyes and my stubborn streak, held my heart in her small hands. She was a miracle, a thread of love woven through generations. Downstairs, I tidied the living room, washing the applesauce dishes and returning toys to their places. Victoria's home was a study in perfection, every surface gleaming, every item in its designated spot. It was a far cry from my own house, where books spilled across tables and mementos gathered dust in cozy corners. The contrast stirred a flicker of self-consciousness in me, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the small tasks that kept my hands busy while Emma slept. I was folding the last of the baby blankets when the front door clicked open. My heart lifted, expecting Victoria, but it was Daniel who stepped inside, his face taut with the strain of a long morning. "Mom, everything okay?" he asked, setting his briefcase down with a weary thud. "Where's Emma?" "She's napping," I said, keeping my voice calm. "She went down a bit early. She was rubbing her eyes, so I followed her lead instead of the schedule." Daniel's brow creased, a shadow of concern passing over his face. "Victoria's pretty particular about the nap schedule. She says it keeps Emma's sleep patterns consistent." I smiled gently, choosing my words with care. "Babies have their own clocks, Daniel. Sometimes a little flexibility suits them better than a strict routine." He sighed, loosening his tie as if shedding the weight of the morning. "Maybe you're right. The presentation wrapped up early, so I thought I'd swing by before heading back to the office. Victoria texted that her meeting's running late." "Emma and I had a wonderful morning," I assured him, my voice warm with the memory of it. "She ate well, played happily, and went down for her nap without a fuss." Daniel's shoulders relaxed, a small smile breaking through his tension. "That's great. She can be tough for sitters sometimes." His gaze swept the tidy living room and his eyebrows lifted. "Wow, you even cleaned up. You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," I said simply. "It gave me something to do while she sleeps." Daniel moved to the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of water, and I followed, leaning against the counter as he drank. After a moment, he spoke again, his tone tentative. "So this new job at the bookstore? Is it because you need money? Because if it is, you know Victoria and I would be happy to help. The question stung not because of its intent, but because it revealed how he saw me, as someone diminished by age, perhaps even fragile. I swallowed the hurt, keeping my voice steady. It's not about money, Daniel. It's about purpose, connection, using my skills and knowledge. The same reasons I took the job at the community center. He nodded slowly, his eyes searching mine as if trying to reconcile this version of me with the one he'd always known. I guess I just never pictured you wanting to work after retirement. Dad always said your dream was to travel and relax. I let out a dry laugh, the memory of his father's assumptions bittersweet. Your father had a lot of ideas about what I wanted, but I never craved a relaxation, not in the way he thought. I wanted freedom, to chase my passions, to contribute something meaningful. Daniel's expression shifted, a spark of curiosity lighting his eyes as if he were seeing me anew. You know, when I stopped by the bookshop yesterday to grab Victoria's order, Martha wouldn't stop raving about you. Said you were a natural with the customers, especially that older guy looking for the Churchill biography. So he had visited the shop, not just called as Victoria had implied. I nodded, a small smile tugging at my lips. Mr. Harris, he's researching his father's military service. I suggested a few resources beyond the biography he came in for. Daniel's smile widened. Martha also mentioned you are starting a children's storytime program. Saturday mornings, I confirmed, my enthusiasm bubbling up. It's a way to bring more families into the shop, to share stories with kids like Emma. Daniel shook his head, a bemused grin on his face. When did you get so entrepreneurial? I've always been this way, I said, my voice soft but firm. You just never had a reason to notice before. The baby monitor crackled with the sound of Emma stirring, and Daniel glanced at his watch. That was a short nap. About 45 minutes, I noted, typical for her age, especially in the morning. Shall I get her, or would you like to? He hesitated, then said, I need to make a quick work call. I'll join you after. I climbed the stairs to the nursery, where Emma sat up in her crib, her face breaking into a radiant smile when she saw me. Hello, sweetheart, I cooed, lifting her into my arms. Did you have a good sleep? Her babbling response felt like a secret language between us, and I pressed a kiss to her forehead, savoring the warmth of her skin. After a quick diaper change, I carried her downstairs, where Daniel was just ending his call. Everything okay at work? I asked, settling Emma on my hip. Just a client with last-minute changes to their financial plan, he said, reaching for his daughter. Hey there, princess. Did you have fun with Grandma? Emma babbled happily, her small hand reaching back toward me, even as Daniel held her. The gesture warmed my heart, and Daniel noticed it too. Looks like someone's made a new friend, he said, his voice tinged with surprise. We've always been friends, I corrected gently. We're just getting to know each other better. Daniel bounced Emma in his arms, his expression softening. I should head back to the office. Victoria texted that she'll be home within the hour. Would you mind staying until she gets here? Not at all, I said, already reaching for the small wrapped package in my bag. Emma and I still have the stuffed owl to open. Daniel handed her back to me, watching as I helped her tear away the colorful paper. The soft owl, with its crinkly wings and gentle rattle, emerged, and Emma clutched it to her chest, patting its fuzzy head with glee. She loves it, Daniel observed, his voice warm. I thought she might, I said, a memory surfacing. You had a similar one, a rabbit with long ears you could pull. You carried it everywhere until it fell apart. Daniel's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. I don't remember that. You wouldn't. You were younger than Emma, but I remember every detail. I hesitated, then added, I have photos if you'd ever like to see them, more than just the albums I brought over. His expression softened, and for a moment he seemed to see me not just as his mother, but as a keeper of his own history. I'd like that, he said, his voice genuine. Maybe next time we're at your house. After Daniel left, Emma and I continued our adventures with her new owl companion. We practiced standing, her tiny hands gripping my fingers for balance, and explored the textures of the living room, the smooth coolness of the coffee table, the rough weave of the rug. We read another story from the bookshelf, Emma's owl tucked under her arm as she leaned against me. The morning felt like a small victory, a bridge built between us through shared moments of discovery. Victoria returned just before noon, her professional composure intact despite the faint lines of fatigue around her eyes. She paused in the doorway, taking in the sight of Emma and me on the floor, surrounded by books. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice cautious but not unkind. "Wonderfully," I said, helping Emma to her feet as she reached for her mother. "She ate well, napped well, and we've been having a marvelous time exploring." Victoria took Emma, her hands gently checking her daughter as if ensuring she was unharmed. Finding nothing amiss, she relaxed slightly. "Thank you for stepping in. It was a major client meeting. I couldn't reschedule." "I was happy to help," I said, gathering my things. "Emma's a joy to spend time with." Victoria's gaze flicked to the tidy living room, lingering on the stack of books and the stuffed owl. "You brought her a gift." "Just a small one, Bum," I said. "The textures are good for tactile development, and the rattle's gentle enough not to overwhelm her." Victoria's eyebrows lifted, perhaps surprised by my insight. "That's thoughtful. And you cleaned up too." "Of course," I said. "I wanted to leave things as I found them." Victoria bounced Emma gently, her expression softening. "Daniel mentioned you made homemade applesauce. Emma usually only eats the organic jarred kind I order." "I used organic apples," I assured her. "There's plenty left in the fridge if you'd like her to have more tomorrow." Victoria nodded, her guarded demeanor easing. "I'll try it. She can be picky about new foods." "She seemed to enjoy it," I said, moving toward the door. "I should let you two get back to your routine. If you need help again, don't hesitate to ask." Victoria hesitated, then spoke, her voice uncharacteristically tentative. "Our sitter's away until Monday. I have another client meeting Friday morning. If you're available..." "I'd be delighted," I said immediately. "Same time, 9 to 12? She nodded and I smiled. "Perfect. Emma and I will have another adventure." As I drove home, a quiet satisfaction settled over me. The morning had been more than a success. It had been a step toward rebuilding trust, not just with Victoria and Daniel, but with myself. Caring for Emma had reminded me of my own competence, my ability to nurture and connect, despite the doubts others might hold. I sensed, too, that Victoria's need for control stemmed partly from her own uncertainties as a mother, not just from skepticism about my abilities. The realization softened my view of her, making her feel less like an adversary and more like a woman navigating the same fears I'd once faced. At home, I warmed leftovers for lunch, then sat at my desk to jot down notes about the morning. I wanted to capture what had sparked Emma's joy, the tactile book, the applesauce, the owl, and what had soothed her like the rocking chair's gentle sway. These details would guide me for Friday's session and inform the storytime program I was planning at the bookstore. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Mom, thank you again for today. Victoria mentioned you are coming back Friday. I know this was last minute, but it means a lot to us." I smiled, typing back, "My pleasure entirely. Emma is wonderful company." Another text followed, unexpected and weighty. "I saw Dr. Ria's letter. Should have acknowledged it properly last week. Sorry about that, and sorry we ever made you feel you needed a doctor's note to be with your granddaughter." The words hit me like a soft blow, stirring a mix of relief and lingering hurt. Their insistence on the medical clearance had stung deeply, a reminder of how age could cast a shadow over one's worth. But Daniel's apology, brief as it was, felt like a crack in the wall between us. I replied simply, "Thank you, Daniel. That means a lot." That afternoon, I walked the trail around Lakeview Park, the spring blossoms vibrant against the rain-washed sky. As I rounded the lake, I spotted Judith Morgan on a bench, feeding ducks with her grandson, Aiden. "Maggie," she called, waving me over. I joined them, smiling at the curly-haired 4-year-old, tossing breadcrumbs with gusto. "Hello, Aiden," I said. "Those ducks are lucky to have you." Judith glowed with pride. "Aiden, this is Mrs. Reynolds. She used to be the head librarian when I was on the board." Aiden glanced up. "Do you know lots of stories?" "Hundreds, Bank," I assured him. "Maybe you can come into the bookshop for story time on Saturday mornings." His eyes lit up. "With voices for the characters?" "Absolutely," I promised. "The best stories need distinctive voices." Judith laughed. "You've made a friend for life. Aiden lives for story time." As Aiden returned to the ducks, she lowered her voice. So how's it going with your son and daughter-in-law? Improving, I think, I said. I babysat Emma this morning, and they have asked me to come back Friday. Judith nodded approvingly. Progress, see? Keeping busy works wonders. Nothing makes you more valuable than being a little less available. It wasn't intentional, I admitted, but you're right. The new jobs have shifted how they see me. Judith's eyes twinkled. Of course they have. You're not just waiting for their call, dependent on their approval. You're living your life, and that demands respect. Her words stayed with me as I finished my walk, resonating with the changes I'd felt. The bookstore and community center jobs had given me a purpose beyond grandmotherhood, and in doing so, they'd strengthened my place in Emma's life. The paradox was striking. By building a world of my own, I'd become more vital to theirs. Thursday morning, I arrived at Daniel and Victoria's house, curious to see if the previous day's warmth would linger. Daniel opened the door, Emma in his arms. Mom, perfect timing, he said, kissing my cheek. Victoria's finishing a conference call. Come in. I followed him to the kitchen, where Emma's breakfast, neatly arranged banana slices and cereal, sat on her high-chair tray. Good morning, sweet girl, I said, earning a banana-smeared smile. Victoria appeared moments later, her expression surprisingly relaxed. Margaret, good morning. Emma's been asking for Gaga all morning. I think she means you. The nickname melted my heart, a small claim Emma had staked on me. Has she? Well, Gaga's thrilled to see her too. Coffee? Daniel offered, already pouring. Thank you, I said, accepting the mug. How was the rest of your day yesterday? To my surprise, Victoria answered directly. Better than expected. Emma was in a great mood after you left. The applesauce was a hit. She even asked for more at dinner. I'm glad, I said, warmed by her acknowledgement. I wrote down the recipe if you'd like it. Victoria's eyes lit with interest. I would. I've been thinking about making more of her food from scratch, but work makes it hard to find time. It doesn't have to be complicated, I offered. I used to batch cook for Daniel on weekends, freezing portions in ice cube trays. Easy to thaw what you need. Victoria looked intrigued, not defensive. That's clever. Maybe you could show me sometime. I'd be happy to, I said, surprised by the opening. The visit unfolded with a new ease. Victoria seemed less guarded, less intent on controlling every moment. When I offered to hold Emma while she prepared for a client meeting, she handed her over without hesitation. Daniel, too, seemed more at ease, his usual rush softened by the morning's calm. As I watched Emma play, her owl tucked under her arm, I felt a quiet hope that this was the beginning of something new, a relationship built on trust, not schedules. On that warm Saturday afternoon, the living room of Daniel and Victoria's home felt unusually inviting, filled with a rare ease that I hadn't experienced in months, perhaps even years. Typically, my visits were tinged with a subtle tension. Daniel would often retreat to his home office, and Victoria's guarded demeanor kept our conversations polite but distant. But today, Daniel lingered with us, his posture relaxed as he sank into the couch, a faint smile playing on his lips. Victoria, too, seemed softer, her usual reserve giving way to a warmth that caught me off guard. As we sat together, the air hummed with a quiet connection, a fragile thread of hope weaving through our words. We talked about Daniel's latest project at work, his voice animated as he described the challenges and small victories of his recent campaign. There was a spark in his eyes, a pride I hadn't seen in a while, and it stirred a deep affection in me, reminding me of the boy who used to share every detail of his school day. Victoria chimed in about her own work, a design project that had her sketching late into the night. Her passion for her craft was evident, and for the first time, I felt she was letting me glimpse a piece of her world. I shared my plans for the children's storytime program at the bookshop, my excitement bubbling over as I described the cozy corner I'd set up with colorful cushions and shelves of picture books. You should bring Emma, I suggested, my heart lifting at the thought of my granddaughter's wide eyes taking in the magic of stories. The first session is next Saturday at 10. Daniel glanced at Victoria, a silent question passing between them. We might do that, he said, his tone thoughtful, as if weighing the idea carefully. Victoria nodded, her expression softening. Sounds lovely. Emma already adores books. She'll sit and flip through them for ages. Her words carried a quiet pride, and I felt a pang of joy at the image of my granddaughter lost in the pages of a story. The conversation shifted to the weekend ahead, and Daniel mentioned a neighborhood barbecue at the Hendersons on Saturday evening. "You should come too, Mom," he said, his invitation catching me by surprise. "It's a mix of families with kids, but there will be people our age too. The Morgans will be there. You know Judith from the library board, right?" His inclusion warmed me, a small gesture that felt like a bridge across the distance that had grown between us. "I saw Judith at the park just yesterday," I replied, touched by the thought of being part of their world in this casual, familial way. "I'd love to come." Victoria nodded, her smile genuine. "Great, it starts at 5, very laid back. Burgers, hot dogs, that sort of thing." I seized the opportunity to contribute. "I'll bring a dessert," I offered, already picturing the strawberry rhubarb crumble that Daniel used to beg for as a child, its tart, sweet aroma filling the kitchen. As our visit neared its end, I lingered in the moment, savoring the newfound ease in the room. Victoria's usual guardedness had softened, her smiles less calculated, her words more open. Daniel, too, seemed more present, his attentiveness to my thoughts carrying a sincerity I hadn't felt in a long time. As I prepared to leave, Victoria confirmed our plans for the next morning. "So, we'll see you at 9, she asked, her tone steady but warm. "I'll be here," I promised, my mind already buzzing with ideas for my time with Emma, a puppet I'd crafted, a stroll in the garden if the weather held. Victoria's smile reached her eyes, a rare and precious sight. "Emma will love that. Thank you, Margaret, for helping us out." Daniel walked me to the door. Emma nestled in his arms, her tiny fingers clutching his shirt. "See you tomorrow, Mom," he said, his voice soft. "Thanks for being so flexible." Driving home, I let my thoughts wander. The hum of the car a backdrop to my reflections. The warmth of the afternoon lingered in my chest, but doubts crept in, casting shadows over the fragile progress we'd made. Was this shift in our relationship real? A sign of lasting change? Or just a fleeting moment born of their need for childcare? At a traffic light, I glanced at my phone and saw a text from Sophia Patel, the financial advisor Walter had recommended. "Looking forward to our lunch tomorrow. I've reviewed the trust documents and have several options to discuss." Our meeting was set for 1 o'clock, right after my morning with Emma, and the timing felt almost poetic, a seamless transition from nurturing my granddaughter to planning her future. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, stitching together the puppet I'd promised Emma. It was a simple thing, a sock transformed with the button eyes, yarn hair, and small bells tucked inside to jingle with every shake. I chose fabrics with different textures: soft velvet, bumpy corduroy, slick satin, to spark her curiosity, in bright colors to catch her gaze. As I sewed, my thoughts turned to the trust I'd set up for Emma, a financial safety net born of love, but now a source of quiet conflict. Considering changes to it felt like a calculated risk, one that could unravel the delicate progress with Daniel and Victoria. If they learned I was exploring options, they might see it as a betrayal, a power play from a meddling grandmother. Yet the possibility of adjusting the trust gave me a sense of control, a reminder that I wasn't just a passive figure in their lives, waiting for their approval. The puppet took shape under my hands, its quirky features a reflection of the grandmother I wanted to be, creative, thoughtful, attuned to Emma's needs. Whatever happened with the trust, this was the legacy that mattered. The moments we shared, the love woven into every small gesture. My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. Victoria's name flashed on the screen, an unexpected sight that sent a flutter of worry through me. "Hello," I answered, my voice cautious. "Margaret, hi," she said, her tone surprisingly warm, almost disarming. "I hope I'm not calling too late." Relief washed over me. "Not at all. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," she assured me. "I was just thinking about that applesauce recipe you mentioned. Could you bring it tomorrow? And maybe any other baby food recipes you think Emma might like? I'm considering your idea about batch cooking on weekends." Her request, so ordinary yet so profound, brought a lump to my throat. It was the kind of exchange I'd longed for, a bridge between mother and grandmother. "Of course," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion swelling inside. "I have a whole collection from when Daniel was little. I'll bring them tomorrow." Victoria paused, then added, "Daniel mentioned you have photos of him as a baby with a stuffed rabbit I didn't know about." My heart lifted at the thought of sharing those memories. I do, albums full of them, actually. Would you like me to bring them sometime? I'd love that, she replied, her voice softening. I want to see what Emma's dad was like at her age. How about next week for our regular visit? I suggested, my heart full. Perfect, she agreed. See you tomorrow morning. After we hung up, I sat with the puppet in my lap, turning over this unexpected call. Victoria had reached out, not out of necessity, but out of genuine interest. A small but significant step toward connection. It didn't erase the months of distance, the moments when her coolness had stung, but it was a start, a crack in the wall that had stood between us. I finished the puppet and set it aside, then pulled an album from the shelf, its pages filled with snapshots of Daniel's first year. His first smile, his first wobbly steps, his first words, all captured with love, my handwriting noting every milestone. Victoria's curiosity about these moments felt like an invitation, a chance for her to see me not as the aging woman she sometimes dismissed, but as the mother who had poured her heart into raising her husband. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my kitchen windows as I gathered my things for the day. The puppet sat beside my purse, its bright eyes seeming to watch as I tucked a folder of baby food recipes into my bag. I'd spent the previous evening typing them up, adding notes about Daniel's favorite combinations: pureed pears with a hint of cinnamon, mashed peas he'd gobble up with a grin. I arrived at Daniel and Victoria's house right at 9, finding Victoria already dressed in a sharp navy suit, her briefcase by the door. Margaret, right on time, she said, her smile carrying a genuine warmth that eased the last of my morning nerves. Emma's just finishing breakfast. Daniel had an early client meeting downtown. In the kitchen, Emma sat in her high chair, her tiny hands gleefully smashing banana pieces. Her face lit up when she saw me, her sticky fingers reaching out with a delighted squeal. Someone's happy to see you, Victoria said, her tone soft, almost affectionate. Let me clean her up before you take over. As she wiped Emma's hands, I set down the folder of recipes. I brought the recipes we talked about, with notes on freezing and what Daniel liked best. Victoria's eyes flicked to the folder, her expression one of quiet appreciation. This is perfect. I'm planning to try some this weekend. She lifted Emma from the high chair and placed her in my arms, the familiar weight of my granddaughter grounding me. Her morning routine is the same as Wednesday: books and toys in the living room, extra clothes in the nursery's top drawer. Don't worry, Victoria, I said with a smile. We'll be fine. She nodded, grabbing her briefcase. I've added your number to my favorites in case anything comes up. I should be back by noon, but I'll text if I'm running late. Take your time, I replied, already looking forward to my morning with Emma. After Victoria left, I let Emma's curiosity guide our time together. The puppet was an instant hit. She shrieked with joy at the jingle of the bells, her tiny hands exploring the different textures with fascination. We moved to the picture window, watching cardinals and chickadees flit around the backyard feeder, her eyes wide with wonder as I pointed out each bird. Later, we settled on the floor with a board book, her small body nestled in my lap as I read, encouraging her to touch the textured patches of fur and feathers. When Emma's eyes began to droop, I carried her upstairs to the nursery, settling into the rocking chair. As I hummed a lullaby, she nestled against me, her breathing slowing until she drifted off. I held her for nearly half an hour, the quiet weight of her in my arms, a balm to my soul. While she napped, I tidied the living room and reviewed the financial documents Sophia had sent, their complexity a reminder of the careful balance I was navigating. A text from Victoria interrupted my thoughts. Meeting running long, probably closer to 12:30. Is that okay? I replied quickly, assuring her it was fine, then returned to my notes, questions forming about the trust structure and my own financial future. Emma's happy babbling from the baby monitor pulled me back to the present. I found her sitting up in her crib, clutching the stuffed owl I'd given her. Hello, sweet girl, I said, lifting her into my arms. After a quick diaper change, we returned downstairs, where she crawled energetically after rolling toys, her determination shining through as she pulled herself up on the coffee table. When she took 3 wobbly steps, gripping my fingers, I cheered her on, her triumphant grin mirroring the pride I felt. Victoria returned at 12:20, apologetic but smiling. The client had endless questions, she said, setting down her briefcase. No need to apologize, I replied. Emma and I had a wonderful time. She even took a few steps holding my fingers. Victoria's eyes widened. Really? She hasn't tried that with us yet. I nodded, watching as Emma crawled toward her mother. The physical therapist at the library used to say babies sometimes try new things with less familiar people. Less pressure, maybe. Victoria scooped Emma up, kissing her cheek. Did you have fun with Grandma Maggie? She asked. And Emma's babbling response, one hand reaching back toward me, warmed my heart. As I gathered my things for my meeting with Sophia, Victoria surprised me with an invitation. Would you like to stay for lunch? You picked those sandwiches on the way home. The offer was tempting, but I had to decline. That's so kind, but I have a lunch meeting with a financial advisor. Boring retirement stuff. Another time then, Victoria said, her disappointment genuine. I'd like that, I replied, touched by her sincerity. And I'll see you at the barbecue tomorrow evening. Driving to Sophia's office, I reflected on the shift in Victoria's demeanor. The woman who once questioned my ability to care for Emma now trusted me with her daughter's mornings, her warmth a sign of growing respect. Sophia greeted me warmly in her modern office, her confidence reassuring as we discussed the trust. Walter speaks highly of you, Maggie, she said, opening a folder with the documents. As we reviewed the options, I felt a quiet strength. Whatever decisions lay ahead, I was reclaiming my agency, not through control, but through the love and competence I brought to every moment with Emma. I sat across from Sophia, the financial advisor Walter had recommended, her calm and attentive demeanor putting me at ease as we discussed the trust I'd set up for my granddaughter Emma. The documents, carefully prepared, outlined a structure designed to provide Emma with a strong foundation, support for her education and a financial cushion as she stepped into adulthood. I nodded as Sophia praised its thoughtful design, my heart swelling with the quiet pride of knowing I'd created something lasting for Emma. My intention had always been to give her choices, a safety net her parents' financial stability might not fully guarantee. Emma's parents, my son Daniel and daughter-in-law Victoria, were doing well, but I wanted to ensure Emma's future held possibilities they might not foresee. Sophia's eyes softened as she leaned forward, her voice gentle but probing. Walter mentioned you're thinking about tweaking the trust structure. What's driving that? Her question caught me off guard, stirring a swirl of emotions I wasn't sure I was ready to unpack. I hesitated, my fingers tracing the edge of my coffee cup, unsure how much of my personal struggles I should reveal. Sophia seemed to sense my unease, offering a reassuring smile. In my experience, as she said, her tone warm and knowing, decisions about family trusts are rarely just about the numbers. There's often a deeper family dynamic at play. Her words felt like an invitation to open up, a permission slip to voice the complexities I've been wrestling with. The truth spilled out slowly, haltingly. My relationship with Daniel and Victoria had been strained lately, a tangle of hurt and misunderstanding. They'd been dismissive, questioning my ability to play a meaningful role in Emma's life, as if my age, 65, somehow diminished my capacity. The sting of their doubts lingered, a quiet ache in my chest. I'd felt sidelined, reduced to an occasional babysitter, rather than the vibrant, capable grandmother I knew I was. Sophia listened, her expression free of judgment, only understanding. So, she said carefully, are you considering adjusting the trust as a way to secure your place in Emma's life? Her bluntness made me wince. It sounded manipulative when put so plainly, like I was scheming to wield the trust as a bargaining chip. That wasn't my intention. Not exactly. It's not about control, I admitted, my voice quieter now. It's about feeling powerless. I wanted to reclaim some sense of agency, to remind them I'm still here, still capable. But things had shifted recently, I explained. Over the past week, small but significant moments had begun to mend the rift. Babysitting Emma had given me precious time with her bright eyes and infectious giggles reminding me why I'd fought so hard to stay involved. Victoria, too, had started to soften, valuing my experience in ways she hadn't before. There was a subtle warmth in her tone now, a flicker of respect that hadn't been there months ago. I'm not as set on making drastic changes anymore, I said, feeling a weight lift as I spoke, but I still want to know what's possible. Sophia nodded, her thoughtful expression reassuring me that my indecision was valid. It's wise to explore your options, even if you don't act on them right away, she said. For the next hour, we dove into the details, different trust structures, conditions, and possibilities. Sophia's patience was a gift. She explained complex financial concepts in a way that felt clear and approachable, never once making me feel like the older woman I'd encountered with other advisors who seemed to assume I was financially naive. Instead, she treated me as an equal, someone with legitimate concerns in the capacity to make informed decisions. Her respect grounded me, and by the end of our conversation, I felt a newfound clarity, even if I wasn't ready to commit to changes just yet. Take your time, Sophia advised as we wrapped up our lunch, her voice steady and kind. Decisions like these, with so much emotion tied to them, shouldn't be rushed. I'll send you detailed notes on each option so you can reflect at your own pace. I thanked her, leaving the meeting with a sense of calm I hadn't expected. The trust was still a tool, but it no longer felt like a weapon in a family power struggle. Instead, it was a way to pass down values, to build bridges across generations. The following Saturday was a perfect day, the kind where the air feels crisp and full of possibility. I was at the bookshop for storytime, a role I'd cherished during my years as head librarian. Emma was there, nestled in Daniel's lap, her tiny hands clapping as I read to a group of children, my voice weaving through the pages with practiced ease. For 40 minutes, I held their attention, guiding them through stories and interactive games, their laughter filling the room. Victoria watched from the sidelines, her eyes bright with something I hadn't seen before. Admiration. "That was incredible, Margaret," she said afterward, her voice warm with genuine appreciation. "You have a real gift with kids." They were completely captivated. Her words landed softly, a balm to the wounds of being doubted for so long. That evening, the neighborhood barbecue brought another unexpected moment of connection. As I chatted with old friends, I overheard Victoria speaking to a stranger. "Emma's grandmother is the former head librarian," she said, a note of pride in her voice. "She's been an incredible resource for us, especially now that Emma's starting to love books. We're so lucky to have her." The words, spoken without any expectation that I'd hear them, pierced me with their sincerity. It wasn't flattery or a gesture to ease tension. It was a heartfelt acknowledgement of my place in Emma's life. My heart swelled, a quiet joy mingling with relief. As the barbecue wound down, Victoria approached me with a suggestion that caught me off guard. "We've been thinking about starting a regular family dinner tradition," she said, her tone casual but earnest. "Maybe Sunday evenings, nothing fancy, just a way for Emma to spend consistent time with her parents and her grandmother." The invitation stunned me, not because it was grand, but because it was so ordinary, so inclusive. It wasn't a one-off gesture or an obligation. It was an offer to weave me into the fabric of their routine. "I'd like that very much," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to spill over. "Good," Victoria replied simply. "Tomorrow at 5, if that works," I nodded, my heart full. 5 is perfect. Sunday evening arrived, and I found myself preparing for our first family dinner with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. I baked a loaf of rosemary bread, its warm, herby scent filling my kitchen, and chose a small gift for Emma, a picture book about a grandmother owl and her grandchild exploring a forest together. When I arrived, Victoria greeted me warmly, taking my coat and ushering me into the kitchen, where Daniel was preparing a roast chicken. Emma, perched in her high chair, squealed with delight the moment she saw me. "She's been watching the door for the last half hour," Victoria said with a smile. "I think she was waiting for you." My heart melted as I kissed Emma's soft cheek and handed her the book. "Look what Grandma brought you, sweet girl," I said, watching her tiny fingers trace the colorful pages. As Daniel worked on dinner, Victoria surprised me again. "I thought we might use the good china tonight," she said, her tone light but meaningful. "Since it's our first official family dinner, could you help with the table settings?" The request, so simple yet so profound, made me feel truly included. Not just tolerated, but valued as a partner in this moment. As we set the table together, Victoria mentioned Emma's upcoming baptism. "We were hoping you might read a scripture passage during the service," she said, a touch of hesitation in her voice. The request moved me deeply, recognizing both my role in Emma's life and my familiarity with religious texts from my years of study and reflection. "I'd be honored," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. Then, almost as an afterthought, Victoria added, I was wondering if you might have something special for Emma to wear. Daniel mentioned you kept his christening gown. I nodded, my heart catching at the thought. I do, I said. It's Belgian lace, beautiful and delicate. My mother wore it, then I did, then Daniel. I've kept it preserved all these years. Victoria's face softened. 4 generations in the same gown, she said quietly. That's a beautiful tradition to carry on. The moment felt sacred, a thread of family history weaving us closer together. We gathered around the table, Emma between Victoria and me in her high chair. Daniel raised his glass in a toast. To family dinners, he said, his voice warm and steady, and to new traditions. We clinked glasses, the sound ringing with a significance that went beyond words. Dinner unfolded easily, the conversation flowing from work to community events, to dreams for Emma's future. For the first time in years, I felt fully present in my son's home, not as a guest or an obligation, but as an integral part of their family. After dinner, I sat with Emma in the living room, reading her new book as she nestled against me, her attention fixed on the story. Daniel watched from the doorway, his expression soft and unreadable. You know, Mom, he said quietly, watching you with Emma these past few weeks has brought back so many memories. The way you always made time to read to me, no matter how busy you were. The voices you used for the characters, the patience you had explaining things until I understood. His words wrapped around me, healing old hurts I hadn't realized I still carried. Those are some of my most precious memories, I told him, my voice catching. Mine too, he said, and I want Emma to have those same memories with you. Victoria joined us, settling on the sofa. I was thinking, she said tentatively, when Emma starts walking more steadily, maybe you could take her to the children's programs at the library. Start that tradition early. The suggestion touched me deeply, an invitation to share something so core to my identity with my granddaughter. I'd love that, I said, my voice thick with gratitude. The evening stretched on, filled with more conversation, more shared plans, more moments of connection. When it was time to leave, Victoria hugged me, a real warm embrace, not the perfunctory gestures of the past. Same time next week, she asked. I wouldn't miss it, I promised. As Daniel walked me to my car, he hesitated, then spoke. Mom, I'm sorry for how things have been, for not seeing how Victoria and I made you feel, for not standing up for you when I should have. His apology, imperfect but sincere, settled over me like a long overdue exhale. Thank you, I said simply, accepting it for what it was. About Emma's trust, he added awkwardly. Victoria and I have talked. Whatever you decide, it's your call. Emma will be fine financially either way. What matters most is that she has you in her life. His words crystallized something I'd been grappling with. The trust was never about money or control. It was about being seen, valued, and included. 3 days later, I met with Walter and Sophia to finalize the changes to Emma's trust. We crafted a structure that balanced educational support, milestone-based distributions, and a small family foundation component that would involve Emma and me in philanthropic decisions as she grew. This creates a beautiful legacy, Sophia said as we reviewed the documents. Not just financial security, but values and connection across generations. I signed the papers with a steady hand, knowing this was exactly what I'd wanted, a bridge between past and future. As I left the office, my phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Emma took 3 steps on her own this morning, sending video. She keeps looking for you. Can you stop by after work? I smiled, watching the clip of Emma's wobbly steps, her face alight with determination and joy. The trust documents in my bag secured her financial future, but the message on my phone held something far more precious. My place in her life, freely given and deeply wanted. In the end, I didn't need to wield the trust as a power move. What had started as a desperate bid for control had transformed into something richer. A legacy that reflected my values and fostered connection. The shift in my relationship with Daniel and Victoria hadn't come from ultimatums or leverage, but from quietly proving my worth through my actions, my wisdom, and my love. As I drove to their house, anticipating Emma's delight when she saw me, I realized the greatest gift I could give her wasn't money or property. It was the example of a woman who, at 65, refused to be diminished by age or doubt, who reclaimed her place in her family's life not through demands, but by living fully, authentically, and with purpose. That was a legacy worth more than any trust fund could ever offer.